Well, I'm here with Pastor Eddie Enim, and I've known Eddie now for quite a long time, Eddie, isn't it? It's been some years now. And we as a church here in Cardiff in South Wales have had a loose partnership in some ways with his church and his ministry in Ghana. It's called Coast for Christ Ministries. It's doing some fantastic work. It has so captivated my vision and encouraged me with what I'm doing here in the UK to see what Eddie and the team and all those that work with him, because it's not a solo thing, is it, Eddie, ever, are doing there in Ghana. And one of the things I've always loved is that if they need a new operating theatre, they put the footings in the ground as a statement of intent. And then when the funding comes, the building rises out of the ground. And I love that idea of declaring something, doing something physical that states that we are stepping out in faith. I think that's so brilliant. And it really ignited me when I came and visited, Eddie. It was brilliant. So welcome. It's really nice to have you with us and really nice to have you here.
Thank you, Reverend Eddie.
It's really good, really good.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you. It really is. And I'm impressed with the bookshelf behind you. You know, a learned man, which is always good.
Yeah,
Um,
that's my prayer room and sitting room.
Very good, very good. So, brother, as you look at the church, I mean, you are in a unique position in some ways because you operate in a I say an African context, but a Ghanaian context. In fact, a Winneba context because it's different everywhere, isn't it? But you also you partner with churches in America and you partner with churches here in the UK. As you look at the church from your lofty position, what would you like to see us learn from one another in order that we might become a church in 10 years' time that we're not now?
Um, I've been thinking of late, especially looking at the world situation. And I realized that the church is gradually preparing itself to be more invisible. There is a
Okay.
shift in that. The church should physically will be more invisible because of the electronic age we are living in, because of the electronic media we are living in. So the physical presence of the church may be challenged a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
And the church will resort more into using the media to have a voice, or preach the gospel to the world in that way. And so we have to look at ourselves in that way. Sometimes you have some churches using the television, using the radio, using all those things like that. That is what the church in 10 years, more of them will do.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though it will come with challenges, we can't deny that fact. Okay?
Yeah.
There will be more of these electronic media, ecclesiological activities that will be taking place. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting, and I don't dispute that at all. I mean I think you're absolutely right. But what are the implications of that incarnationally? Because one of the things I realize about Coast for Christ is that it is boots on the ground. It is making a difference in the practical, physical realities of people's lives every day. As we become more, and I think you're right, and particularly I think in the West we are becoming more invisible for other reasons as well. Um, it it has a real challenge where incarnation is concerned. So how do you see that?
Yes. You see, God is spirit,
Yes, yes.
and He has been moving with us for thousands of years before He took the human flesh to be
Yes.
with Him. The church started with these dual characters. Now, the physical character is diminishing, and now the spiritual character is emerging. The
Okay.
challenge is that churches that did not utilize these two qualities of life are now beginning to, feel sad. Why didn't we physically make our presence known? Because if your physical presence is known, your voice is in the minds of the people. And so when you are not there in the physical, they will still know that you are with them. Okay. So, well, not many of the churches did that. Okay. Not many of the churches did that. So how can we, by the use of the electronic age, incarnate the gospel to them? Yeah, that is important. It will come from your introduction. Who are you in the electronic media? Who are you? Define yourself, your identity. Okay, and that is why it's important that in the community, you have to make the community people realize your relevance. In the community. If they realize your relevance in the community, it doesn't matter your physical presence because you already know your spiritual qualities that has been helping them in that particular manner. And so for this reason, I will urge the churches to do more physical, visitations and physical presence in those communities, because I tell you, a time is coming when there will be the physical persecution of the church. There will be a physical persecution of the church by world governments and by religious fanaticisms. When it happens that way, what do? Do we stop preaching the gospel? No. We just have to use the electronic media, to do that. Yeah, because as you know, with the disciples, I mean, there was physical persecutions and, they hid themselves, okay? By hiding themselves didn't diminish the gospel that they had already, established in the communities. Yeah.
Okay. That's really interesting, because another of my contributors actually said almost the same thing. They said they believe a persecution is coming, and we need to prepare for it. And I don't dispute that. In fact, in some ways, we're beginning to see the vestiges of that in the West already. Because the church is being challenged about some of its values, some of its absolutes, even as we speak. And there are those that are sort of surrendering to that, and those that are seeking to resist are finding themselves in difficulties, without a shadow of a doubt. And one of the things that strikes me about it is that there is sometimes, and I mean this most respectfully, but sometimes we deserve persecution because the things that we are doing are contrary to the gospel. And then other times the persecution is undeserved because it's the gospel that's being attacked. It's the gospel that's being challenged. And I think that presents us with a real difficulty, in being Christ to the world, really, and making sure we do that. But I find it really interesting that you in many respects right now, you're saying that we need to be both local, rooted in the physical reality of the place in which we're set, but global in terms of our ability to communicate, because the technology gives us that opportunity. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Another challenge that I see is that the world is trying to shut the church down.
Yes.
The world is trying to stop us from speaking.
Yeah.
They are trying to stop us, one, physically, to prevent us from reaching to them. They are succeeding in that. Yes. They are now also targeting our voice, and they want us to stop doing that. This we should not. Every church must have electronic media. Every church must have electronic media. I mean, you should not say that we don't have budget for that or whatever it is like that. No, if you begin to bring issues about finances in that particular thing, you already said it, that we put the boot on the ground before when we get money, then we go up in that way. So churches that do not have that idea of trying to have electronic means, some churches must begin to have television stations. Some churches must have radio stations. I mean, they should use the Zoom. They should use all the electronic means, at our disposal, and the gospel will really get there. Because I tell you, my brother, They are in their dark rooms, they are in their meeting rooms and strategizing how to shut our mouth down.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And yet the reality is, Eddie, that it's never been easier, has it? I mean, because of this,
Mm-hmm.
it has never been easier to communicate with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that's really struck me in terms of the technical revolution that has happened, say, in Africa, where you jumped from landline telephones straight to this,
Yeah,
which meant that access to the world was put in the hands of the majority.
yeah.
Everybody could access the world
Mm-hmm.
if they had one of these, and that, in a way, is actually maybe our saving grace when
Mm-hmm.
persecution comes, because
Yeah.
there's no way they can shut these down.
No.
Everything relies upon them, and therefore
Mm-hmm.
they can't stop us really.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes, that is true. They can't stop us writing. However, the challenge there is how many read from this cell phone, and
Yes,
two, how many understand the language that is being communicated through this.
yes,
Okay, so it comes back to us to go back to our translators to begin more to do translations so that we can have the languages on the cell phone in order to communicate to them.
yes. Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And that is coming. I mean, one of the things that I find remarkable at the moment is, Google Translate, for example.
There you go.
We are an international church these days. We've got folks from Iran. I had
Mm-hmm.
a meeting with 3 Iranians recently, and none of them could speak English, and we communicated through Google Translate. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
But you're right, the technology needs to continue to develop, because of the
Mm-hmm.
minute it's got the 200 languages, major languages of the world, we are in a much better place. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, let me ask this question quickly.
Yes.
Uh, in our liturgical order in the church, one of it is our Sunday school, that we use. Do we put the Bible aside and teach how to use electronics at our Sunday school? That is
No,
important.
it is very
That is
important.
very much important. If we
It
really
really
want
is.
to get into the 10 years time, how the church should look like, every Tom, Dick, and Harry needs to know how to use these apps, that
Yes.
comes, to the cell phone. Because I tell you, we have many here around me. They have these high quality cell phones, but you ask them of certain programs and they are not aware of it. All
Okay.
that they
Yeah.
use it to do is to communicate.
Yes.
That's all
Yes.
that they used to do. But there are
Yes.
thousands of programs that we can easily use to do that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Do you know?
one thing that is also
Go on.
we need to talk about. We've already talked about it. Traditional mission is just going down now more into the electronic missions. That we have to do. However, I'm wondering how many churches have actually sat down to define how they will do missions from now to the 10 years to come. Will
Okay.
they still do it by proxy? Or will they still do it by electronic means? Or will they combine the three? That, your presence, the
Yes.
electronics, and then also by proxy. I'm very sure that um, doing it by presence may take maybe 5 years or 10 years to
Yeah.
come. Once a while, then you come down, whatever, or we go across or whatever it is like that. But day to day, supposed to be the electronic means,
Yeah.
right? And so with this comes the challenge of another thing that we need to look at in 10 years' time. If we do not take care, AI will continue to dominate our churches, and AIs may become even pastors in our churches,
Yes.
of which we need to be very careful about. This time, they try to interrupt your normal things that you want to do. So how would the church strategize, to keep the AI away from, our liturgical order, but at the same time also utilizing it, to reach out for more people, in the faith. So the AI is another thing that we need to be very careful
Yeah,
how we use
absolutely.
it and how we, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you're right. And we are on the beginnings of an AI revolution, aren't we? Where we're going to be in a situation where you won't even know you're speaking to a non-real person.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be campaigning going on, I guess, to give the same social identity to AI as though they were real, and that's an interesting place from a gospel's perspective, isn't it? For us to find ourselves in. Yeah, absolutely. That's probably not 10 years. That's probably a bit longer than that. But the speed with which things change is dramatic, isn't it? But you are right. I mean, it's really interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, I asked Microsoft's version Copilot and a question, and I got the answer, and the answer was wrong. But if I did not know the answer was wrong, I would have thought it was, oh, well, the computer's got it right.
There you go.
And you need to be so careful where that's concerned. You
Yes.
really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's never going to replace the ability, the need for the church to be in the word and the word to be in them in order that their discernment is fueled in the context that we are going to find ourselves in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then in the light of this, as much as it is helping us also, we need to make sure that our members are not dehumanized,
Yes.
because they depend on that and then stop communion with God. They depend
Yes.
on that and stop opening the scriptures themselves. They depend on that and do other things that otherwise God will require your physical body to do.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it's really what you say is really interesting because recently, I mean, up until recently, all of my study was being done virtually online. It was being done via electronic means, and I realized that I was losing something. So I've gone back. I've gone back to reading and writing notes, pen and
There you
paper.
go. There you go.
And do you know what it's done? It's made me slow down. It's
Mm-hmm.
made me reflect deeply. It's
Mm-hmm.
made me chew things over in a way
Yeah.
that technology can't help me do.
There you go.
And so I agree with you and wholeheartedly. We need, but it is that combination, isn't it? It's that combination of being in the now, in the
Yeah.
present,
Yeah.
and in the virtual
That's
at
right.
one and the same time. Yeah, yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
Because
Yeah,
you are a spiritual being and a physical being.
yes,
So by way of living and interacting with the social dynamics that we have over there, also you need to have a place of AI or electronic means as part and parcel of your life.
yes,
But they come as what? They come as slaves. They don't come as kings.
yes. Yes, yes. And sadly, we are going to be facing a society where AI becomes king
Hmm.
for a lot of people. Yeah, absolutely. This is really helpful. This is really,
Yeah.
really helpful, brother. And I knew because you are a strategic thinker and you
Yeah.
are a forward thinker that there would be great value in having a conversation with you. So what do you think the things are that we need to put in place now if we're going to face this future and face it four square? The church has a terrible tendency to deny the change until it's too late. How do we
Yeah.
do this?
Um. In the first place, we need to get back one-on-one with Jesus.
Yes. Yes.
One-on-one with Jesus with no interference.
Yeah.
Get back to the Bible. Get back to prayer. Get back to holy living.
Yeah.
Personal devotion to God is number one.
Yeah.
Number two, with this influx of this electronic, something we've so much talked about, comes the danger of reduction.
Okay.
They are trying as much as possible to remove the truth from the scriptures.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so when we get back to the scriptures, we will stop, at least to some significant level, our the tendency for them to change, this basic truth in the scriptures.
Yeah.
They are putting the Bible on our electronics, but how many times do we take time to compare, the original Bible to that which is placed over there? We just read it and we go, and we need to stop doing that. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
we also need to get back to the truth. I'm talking about basic pillars of the apostolic faith.
Yeah.
Because right now, apostasy is gradually being accepted as normal Christian life.
Yeah.
Sin is no more mentioned. Holiness is no more mentioned.
Tell me
Prayer is
about
no
it.
more mentioned. Judgment is no more mentioned.
Right.
The second coming of Christ is no more mentioned. Apostasy is creeping in, and we need to hit it on the head.
Yeah.
Teach it in our Sunday school. Make sure that we talk about it. And we should not be afraid when we point out sins, that we do to each other in brotherly love. If they accept it, fine. If they don't accept it, we've done our duty. But we need to make sure that reductions are no more, a challenge in our, a Christian work or apostasy in that same business. And then one of the things also that I realized that we should look at it is, if they cannot get the Western church, if they cannot get the Eastern church, they will come back to Africa.
Okay.
Because they know Africa has many challenges.
Yeah.
One of it is what? Poverty. Okay. So whilst the Western churches are struggling to establish the truth once more, the pillars of our gospel faith once more, the Eastern church, whilst they are trying to go back into Eastern mysticisms, that's what they are doing. So, and they are trying to transport it to the West. That is a battle between you and them. Okay. Yeah. But coming back to Africa, there was the danger of us trying to apply the Maslow's theory in our theology. We are trying to embed it in our, in our theory, which is actually diluting the theory. Okay. The theology. So what can we do in 10 years' time to save Africa from the onslaught of these things? And one of the things that we can do is what we are doing now. Okay. That's one of the things that we can do. You're already, the church, is supporting. Our Albany Road is supporting the ministry, which means that there's a connection. Okay. There's accountability. Okay. But there should also be, the stand as to whether, Eddie, how much are you impacting, the gospel, the support that will be given to you, to the quality of life of the people? How many people are you bringing out of poverty, to grab the gospel and whatever it is like that? So the Western church is grappling with the issue of discipleship. The Eastern church is facing the challenge of mysticisms, but the African church is also applying the false philosophical issues into the gospel. Okay. Some time ago it was a prosperity gospel. Okay. But now it is meet the need gospel that African churches are preaching today. And sometimes when you tell them about the salvific message of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they come to you straight and say that, but I'm an empty sack. I can't stand unless, I'm filled with something before I can stand strong. Okay, so that is the challenge we are facing, and African pastors are no more, holding on to the truth. Okay, knowing that, I don't know what to say, but knowing that Matthew chapter 6, verse 31 to 33, God says that He knows that we have need of all these things, but we should seek first the kingdom of heaven. But this is the problem and challenge that African churches are facing now. Okay. So we have to have this three, synergy: the Western church, the Eastern church, and the African church, to save it from the gospel dilution, to save it from the theology, which is actually, being challenged, by these Western and Eastern and, all those government here and there. Yeah. So we need to have that. I'm fighting very hard here to move the Maslow's theory, that many pastors are preaching and trying to paint it in such a way that it is gospel. No, it is Maslow's theory. Maslow's
Yes.
theory.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And it doesn't answer questions. It is the gospel that really answers questions. And
Yes.
for you to say that, you must meet their needs whilst you hold on to their spiritual salvation as well.
But that's interesting, Eddie, because of the many people that I've met, not just locally but globally, you are putting into practice the gospel enfleshed. You are actually unapologetically proclaiming the gospel, but you are not ignoring the need. Because there is a sense in which I mean the problem with Maslow's theory is this thing about it's these little steps, and we can't do the one before we do the other. And that's where it falls down, isn't it? Because the reality is that what you are doing is the two together.
Yeah.
And that again has been something I found really interesting. One of the things
Yeah.
that was fascinating being in the school when I was over was the integration of faith and education. It wasn't that faith sat out here and everything else was here. It was that you were treating people like whole people, body, soul,
Yeah.
and spirit.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways that's the danger with Maslow's theory, isn't it? That we actually deal with people as bodies,
Yeah.
but we never get around to dealing with them as spiritual beings.
Amen.
And unfortunately, that's the wrong way round. Because if you want people to be in wholeness and holiness, you have to start with that which is dead within them. You have to start
That's
from
right.
the inside out,
There
not
you
the
go.
outside in.
There
And
you go.
that's the key. Is that what you're saying? Is that the
Yes,
key?
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly what
Okay.
I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah. And then one interesting thing that we should prepare ourselves, as we envision 10 years time how we will look like, is trying as much as possible to know the difference between a God-centered church and a human-centered church.
Yes. 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 Yes.
I'm very serious at that.
I
Because
agree. I agree.
sometimes our church meetings, business meetings, I mean, I don't know, but many times are devoid of God-centeredness, what God really wants to do.
Yes.
And sometimes it also sort of dehumanizes us, especially when we are thinking about democracy, everybody can talk here and there, all those things like that. I mean, in 10 years' time, if we don't correct this now, in 10 years' time, I mean, they will say that I got the right to speak, human rights, freedom, whatever it is like that. And the God-centered activity and character of the church may be substituted by human-centeredness.
Yes.
Because I've gone to school, I've learned, I have my qualifications, I'm more qualified than this. So when I speak, you have to hear. That's not what we are looking for. In 10 years' time, that's what they are looking for.
Yeah.
When world governments, came with that idea, see where we are now. When the world government depended upon, this, all these type of things. I mean, unions and education and workshops and whatever it is like that. Look at where we are now.
Yeah.
But if we can rise up, and you know what? God usually starts doing this in the remote places.
Okay.
And who knows if Albany Road and Coastal Christ can start a revolution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can start a revolution.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean a revolution. Yeah. Because just imagine when Chartworth, I think it was Chartworth Baptist Church that donated some was it £1,500 or £2,000 or so, and we got the child incubator for the hospital, and see how many children have been saved by this incubator, and see how many of these parents are now giving gratitude to God by becoming members of the church. God started it from somewhere. The whole world doesn't know about it.
Yeah.
But see what is happening. The whole world doesn't know what the money from Albany Road is doing. Thousands of souls are being saved. Children who will not have access to school are now having access to school and
Yes,
education.
yes.
The world doesn't know about this. That is why
Yeah,
God
absolutely.
always likes starting things in the remote places.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things I've noticed is that when a church is God-centered, God can accomplish more than a human-centered church.
I
You know,
salute you, sir.
God is the God of amazing potential.
I
And
salute you.
when we set our hearts to him, his plans are greater than our plans. His
Mm-hmm.
ways are greater than our ways. And
Mm-hmm.
and and I think certainly in the West we've failed to see that. We're so busy strategizing and using business technique. And I'm not saying that those things aren't helpful, because actually organization is helpful without a
Yeah.
doubt. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, you were saying to me before we started that your children are now doctors, and if they hadn't gone and got their training, they wouldn't be a lot of use in the hospital. So
There
nobody's
you go.
denying that,
Yeah.
but they are surrendering their expertise to Christ-centeredness, aren't they? That's what
Yes.
they're doing. And
Yes.
that's important. Yeah, I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you. Because
Yes.
if the world doesn't see Christ in the church,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to see Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very good. Very good. I knew you'd inspire me. I knew you'd make me. I'm going to finish this and I'm going to be so, let's get on with it. So, brother, thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you
It's
too.
an absolute privilege to connect with
Amen.
you.
Amen.
And I'm sure there are others that are going to find this really, really helpful. So bless you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. God bless you.